Hello and welcome to Fine is a Four-Letter Word. My guest today is Gabe Lullo. Welcome to the show, Gabe.
Well, Lori, first off, huge fan of yours. Super happy to be here and super excited to dig into this. This is going to be fun.
Oh, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So let's just jump right straight in.
Love it.
And I'm going to ask you, what were the beliefs that you were raised with uh, that contributed to you becoming who you've become? What did
You
you
know,
learn
I
when you were growing up?
yeah, I have a tagline that I put on every one of my LinkedIn posts, and it's very simple. It's do hard things,
Mm.
and that's like our family model my entire life. It wasn't because I was on LinkedIn. It's because that's just how I was raised. I was raised in upstate Buffalo, New York. It's very cold and it dumps a lot of snow, so you just kind of have to be, uh, you know, have a lot of grit to live here. And I think that's a big reason on how I was raised, right? But the other thing is, my dad died when I was young. I was 2 years old. I was raised by a single mom. She didn't go to college before she had us. She actually put herself through school. She always worked two jobs, and she became an English teacher. And then she really showed us what work ethic is all about. So I'd say the biggest thing that I learned and just the culture and the family that I had around me was, um, you know, just get stuff done. I know I don't like to swear on podcasts, but
Oh,
I
you
think
can
you,
hear.
I,
We
I
don't
think you
mind.
know what I'm trying to say is,
Yeah.
just get shit done
Yeah.
and just work really hard, and good things should happen at the end of that.
Were you given the tools or shown the 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 way to do that as opposed to like being just shoved out in the 7 feet of snow and going uh
Yeah,
go
yeah,
survive.
absolutely. I would say the non-traditional way. And what I mean by that is, first one to graduate college in my generation with all my cousins, so that was a big deal for my mom, who was an educator, of course. I was really pushed on education. I went to great schools. I went to, really nice, college. I went to a private grade school. Now you may say, oh, well, listen, we did that because we had financial aid, and my
Mhm.
mom spent 90% of her income to put us through good schools. And so I think that was really important. And it gave me the structure. We didn't have nice things, but we had a good education. And I think that's a big part of how I was raised.
Yeah, yeah, a lot. I'm just thinking as you're talking, it's like a lot of I can't remember who it was that originally was talking about it, but the things that can't be taken away from you. Like education is something you will always, always have.
Yeah. It's funny. My mom actually, this is a weird thing, but my mom required that my sister and I went to bartending school at the age of 18.
Why was
And
that?
that is what put her through school. She always worked in the restaurant business. We're Italian, so we like to eat. And she said, you know what? We like to eat and drink as a family, but might as well make money while doing it. You know what I mean? So it's like, and that's how we did it. And so she said that no matter how good or how bad you have it, I don't want you to be a bartender for the rest of your life, Gabe, but I want you to know, like, if anything doesn't work out, you'll always have something to go fall back to pay the bills. And that's what it was for us. It was bartending, and I bartended in New York City all throughout college, and I did interns during the day, and I learned sales during the day on Wall Street and in the stock exchange and different financial firms. But at night, I was slinging drinks and serving rich people, and I can tell you, it taught me a lot about sales. It taught me how to make commission. It taught me how to negotiate. It taught me how to build rapport. And it's interesting, like, I never thought that was such an important part of my sales career, but it was. So I always, when I'm interviewing salespeople and they say bartender on their resume, a lot of people maybe get embarrassed to do that. I say it's like one of the greatest sales jobs you've ever had.
That's so cool. I always thought it would be fun to do that. I've never done it, but I always
Yeah.
thought it would be fun.
Yeah, it was great. You meet a lot of people, you're networking, it teaches you how to talk and be quick. And it also teaches you how to deal with some crazy people as well, if you will, right? Some
Right.
negative people. But
Mhm.
it definitely is a great lesson that I learned at a young age,
And I bet it also teaches you how to be a good listener
for
because a lot
sure.
of times people are there because that's that nobody else is listening to them.
Yeah, I mean, I think, people in the service business, such as the restaurant industry, bartenders specifically, hairdressers, stylists, I think they're more psychologists than they are bartenders and hairdressers, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
I think those are great professions that teaches you patience, listening, empathy, understanding people, which sales is all. That's all it is, really.
Yeah. You said, did you, I can't remember now. I was listening, I promise.
No, it's fine. Ask again.
You said we, and you were referring to your sister, right? Do you have more,
Yes. Yeah.
just the one sibling?
Yep. My sister and I. Yep.
Okay. All right. Are you the younger?
I'm actually the older.
Okay.
I'm the talker and she's the brainiac. She's got a lot of degrees. She lived all around the world, worked for two presidents, and she's the book smarts of the two, and I'm the talker of the two, if you will. So
Okay.
very different. But yeah, that was the two of us.
Did she work in bartending, or did she just learn how to do it, or did she actually work it too?
She never ever did it after that class. She
Okay.
thought it was the biggest waste of time ever. She'd rather be reading a book and learning things that had nothing to do with people. But yeah, yeah. But she still did it.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting to me how siblings can be raised by the same parents in the
For
same
sure.
household and be so different.
It is insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so true. We have siblings that work here. Ironically, our COO and our head of partnerships are sisters, and they're best of friends. They work so well together, right? And then I know other people who just they can't stand their sibling. They can never work. Yeah. So it's interesting on the dynamics, more so to the people side of our business.
Yes, absolutely. I remember my mom saying her greatest accomplishment in life was raising my brother and me to be as close as we are.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing, especially when you go through tragedy at a young age like us. We're very close in age, so yeah, for sure. Now I have a daughter; she's 11. She's his only child. We'll probably have more. I just got remarried, and so she's now eager to have a brother and sister as well. But there's also nuances there with being an only child as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, because the show is called Fine is the four-letter word, there was a time in your life when things were maybe not so fine, but you were telling people they were. And
Yeah,
so share that story because there's a really interesting part to it. But I'll let
yeah.
you get to it first.
Yeah, I mean, there's a time in which it's actually the reason why I came here to LEU. Um, I started my own business. I was working with a partner, and those are always great stories to start off with, right? Everything's great, and then all of a
Any
sudden
story that starts with "I had a partner,"
I had
you
a
know there's
partner,
something else
right?
coming.
Yeah, exactly, and it turned into where you're doing more work than your partner, right? But you're making the same amount of money. And when you see those things start to happen, and the desire shifts on one of those partners, it's really hard to recover from that, and animosity sets in, and why am I doing this, and it doesn't make sense anymore. And then when you start being asked, yeah, how are things going? Everything's fine. It used to be great, but everything's
Hmm.
fine now because I
Yeah.
don't want to tell you the truth, right? Because it's maybe embarrassing, or you're kind of like, I always say, you're sitting on a nail, right? Like there was a funny story about the guy who had a dog and he was hollowing the whole time, and everyone was asking, what's wrong with your dog? And the guy said the dog's sitting on a nail, and his response was like, well, why doesn't he just move? And then he said, it doesn't hurt bad enough.
Mm.
And the moral of the story is like, everything's fine, but is the pain of change greater than the pain of staying the same?
Yeah.
And once that becomes greater, that's when you start to change. And so that was where I was for me. I found an owner of a company, and I got excited about his vision, and I made the move, and decided that, hey, I'm going to start over. And ironically, that was this company, and now I'm the CEO of that company. So it's pretty interesting on the story, how it happened for me.
Right, but you did not start in an executive role.
Heck
Like
no, I
you left
started from
that
the bottom.
partnership and what happened?
Yeah, I run an SDR agency, sales development rep. For those who don't know the acronym, some don't. So SDRs, or appointment setters, or cold callers, or prospectors, all the same thing. And I literally started as an SDR here. My first title and job was cold calling, coming from a owner of a company that I started to
Hmm.
cold calling. And, it was a big step backwards for some. To me, it was a breath of fresh air, and it was an opportunity to prove myself to the owner of this company that I can do a lot more than just this, and I could help him build this business. But he and I both agreed that we should start there, so I know what it is I'm going to be building and understand the role really well and understand how things are done here. And 90 days later, moved into manager, director, VP. I left the company on good ground to go run two software companies because I wanted to really get my arms around SaaS and technology and software and finance. And then he recruited me back to take over as CEO. So that's been my about 11-year run with the company.
Hmm. Hmm. So when you uh, dissolved the partnership or walked away from the partnership or whatever happened to that first partnership,
Yeah.
um, and started as an SDR working
Yeah.
for basically not much more than minimum wage.
Right. Yes,
How,
that is correct.
how old were you?
Well, at that moment in time, I was 31 years old.
Okay. So a lot of people would not step back like that, or,
No.
that would be like
And I just
beneath
had a,
them.
and I was, we just had a baby at the time.
Oh,
So
wow.
I had a 1-year-old child, and I was, just about to be 32 years old. And I was traveling all across the country every week running a business. And I didn't want to, it was a twofold thing. I needed to make a change in my life because of my partnership, but I also wanted to be home with my daughter. I didn't want to be on the road 5 days out of the week. And so that was my motivation.
Uh-huh. Um, yeah, like I said, it's just so much respect for that because you had a bigger vision. Obviously, you didn't think you were going to be at that job. Like that was not the end of your career. Like that was not where you were gonna stay. But you had a vision, right? A plan. Like, oh, I'm going to be here for 90 days and then I'll move.
Yeah, I mean, when I came here, I said, listen, I'm going to give it all I got. And it was actually 90 days. I said, listen, I don't know if I want to do this. I do want to do the big part of the company and the big role, but it was very small at that point. And so I said, let me do this for 90 days to see if I can do the role before I can recruit people for the role. Because my role before was recruitment and training. And so I knew how to recruit, but I recruited executives and VPs and C-level executives. This as the SDR role is not that, quite entry level for many. And so the reality is like, I just never recruited for something like this before. I've cold called, I've prospected, but I never actually staffed this type of function.
Hmm.
And so I did it for 90 days. Not to toot my own horn, but I broke all the records that was already set. And so I'm like, something's working here.
Yeah.
And then we turned it into a recruiting job, and then we went from there.
Uh-huh. Uh, what advice would you give to people who are listening if they are in a situation similar, like whether it's a partnership or they're just at a job that is not suiting them, and but they are thinking, well, I can't afford to take a minimum wage job, to take a step back, to take a step forward. Like,
Yeah.
what do you say to those?
I mean, when you say you can't afford, that is that
Because
is
that's the thing that
yeah,
always
that's what
comes
that's
up,
what
right?
people say. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, can you? I mean, the reality is like, yes, there's going to be temporary pain for long-term gain. This is not a shift that should last very long.
Hmm.
And to the point of bartending, you can always do something in addition to what you're currently doing in order for you to do it. But there's a lot of opportunities out there, right? You can do something part-time. I always say you could work part-time on your fortune and full-time on your job, right?
Hmm.
You can work part-time on your fortune and full-time on your job, especially in this day and age. I think the biggest buzzword outside of AI this year is fractional. I don't know if you've heard of, but everyone fractional
Yes.
this, fractional
Yes.
that, and there's nothing wrong with it. But at the end of the day, you're working part-time.
Right.
You could be a fractional SDR, you could be a fractional chief marketing officer, you could be a fractional CRO. And now you don't have to be executive to be a fractional something. It
Right.
really is just meaning you're doing it part time. And so, if you think about it, you can do things part time and build on your fortune while you're working full time on your job. So it doesn't have to be as painful.
Yeah. How did you find this this thing that lights you up? Because when you had mentioned in our pre-show call that you started down a different career path
Yeah.
and then you changed direction and now you're doing something that really excites you, lights you up.
Yeah. So our name of our company is called Alleyoop. We like the play on words there. It's like the ultimate assist in basketball, right? It's the cool shot that the guy grabs the ball and slam dunks it. But that person gets all the credit. But the real hard part, the real work is throwing the ball up perfectly so the other person could slam dunk it and get the credit. So who's doing the real hard job? Well, it's the guy who actually threw the ball up initially. And so that's what we use to build our business as an analogy and as a, a way of marketing. But I will say this, that like when you look at, what I'm doing at each and every single day, when you look at what's going on in the market, the SDR role itself is really getting very, very big. So to answer your question, what's lights me up and what gets me excited is I like seeing people come into our company, and we call it Alleyoop alumni. And these are people that stay for a while and then go other places, and they use us really as a starting point, as a lily
Mm.
pad, as a trampoline to get into an executive role or a manager role or a full-time seller role. So what gets me excited is watching someone come into our ecosystem and then see them kind of graduate off. And it could still be here. It could be, our COO is 30 years old and she was an SDR in her first job. It's
Mm.
kind of amazing to see that, right? But at the end of
Yeah.
the day, I have, people that I can point to and hired and mentored that are now running multi-billion dollar go-to-market agencies, or I'm sorry, departments for companies. And I think that's what gets me mostly the most excited is seeing people build their career from here.
Yeah. And so I guess the question I was really asking is how did you find your way into
Yeah,
this industry, this career? Because it's not where you started when you first came out of college. You were on your way to
yeah.
potentially becoming an attorney, right?
Yes, I was in law school, and I was not wanting to go. 9/11 happened. Ironically, we're right around the time right now of
Yeah.
talking about it. But 9/11 happened, and I was going to be working in the financial industry. Everything was frozen. All the internships that I was working on prior to in my schooling years, everything froze up. And so I said, okay, I have to go back to school because that's what everyone else is doing, just to kind of delay the inevitable
Mm.
of looking for a job. And I realized, what? I didn't want to do that. I was ready to make money, not spend more. And so I got into sales. I really, like I said, had to pivot. That was another point in my life that was forced to pivot, and got into sales. And that's when I found this role. And then I went into executive recruiting and then came back to this role. So
Do you think it matters to salespeople what they're selling if they love the thrill of the game of selling?
yeah,
Does it matter so much to what they're selling as much as the fact that they are selling?
I think you can do anything that you may not love to sell for about a year. But I think over time it's going to eat at you. And I'm not saying ethically or like morally. I
Right.
don't think you should ever sell anything that isn't something that was amazing to sell. But if you don't really have passion for it, or truly it doesn't fire you up or makes you super enthusiastic and magnetic to your prospects, I think you're going to have a hard time. They always hear kind of fake it till you make it. That you can find ways to get people excited about the product, for them. But if you're not truly excited about it, I don't think you're going to be there long term.
I asked that question because I have a good friend who has consistently over the years said, I don't care what business I'm in. I
Yeah.
just like the game of business. I just
Yeah.
like being in it. And I was like, really? I don't know.
I
So
don't know.
I
I
just,
think that's a scapegoat. I mean, I'm not saying they're wrong, but how long have they stayed at that one company? Take a look at their resume. I mean, they may be still job jumping, and it's probably because they're still chasing something that they're really passionate about. But hey,
yeah,
that may drive people. Just the fact that they're in this game of sales, which is a fun game to be in. Definitely a roller coaster, but I can see that. But I just don't see myself excited about selling something that isn't really, I would say, impacting people in a massive way that fires you up.
yeah, yeah. And that brings up another point is that if you don't know what the thing is, it's like go to conduct your career maybe as a somewhat of a buffet, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Let me
I
try
mean, there's a
this. Let me
lot of
try that.
companies out there that offer a lot of unique products, and you can give them a smorgasbord of offerings versus one specialty, and you can absolutely find success there for sure, I think.
Yeah. What are the tools or techniques that you've used over your career to help you stay in the right stay in the right mind frame, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obsessed with listening to personal development people. Podcasts. My wife loves podcasts. I love podcasts. I love obviously doing them with you, but also I love absorbing content.
Uh-huh.
And I don't really stay. I'm not on the socials like everyone is these days. I live and breathe LinkedIn. I'm very passionate about LinkedIn. I think it's a great way to have positive content in that way. It's very hard to find negativity on LinkedIn, but I think it's all you see everywhere else on all the
Mhm.
other platforms. Not to be negative about those platforms, but yeah, I really like listening to the other people who are having success and using them as inspiration.
Yeah. Is there anybody specifically, and I'm not asking you to say my show. I'm like who do you look at as great examples of business leaders or people who are doing life the say like the quote unquote right way or the way a way that you admire?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everyone, there's so many podcasts out there right now. I think there's a podcast for almost every area
Yeah,
of
yeah, and it
whatever it
doesn't
is
have
you're
to be a
looking for.
podcast.
Yeah, for sure. John Barros is a guy who is a quintessential sales trainer in the sales business to business space. He does have a podcast. I have done it. It's a really good source. He has 500,000 followers on LinkedIn. He's a great guy. I know him personally, and I can tell you that he delivers in a big way and brings in some great speakers. But also he lives really in my space, which is that sales world, and so I really gravitate to people who I respect that have you know I get attracted to people who walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Mhm.
I can't stand those gurus out there who try to say, "Oh yeah, email's dead and LinkedIn's everything," or "LinkedIn's dead and email's everything," and then you realize at the end of that message they're trying to sell you something that obviously is resonating with whatever they just said. So I
Right,
just
and they
look at it as
posted it
like,
on
yeah,
LinkedIn, which they said was dead, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like how big of a contradiction is this? But if you look at it, I like and respect people like myself. I was quiet on LinkedIn for years, and I don't say that I didn't see value in it. I just said I was working. I was
Mhm.
learning, I was building, I was running companies and operating, and I just didn't have anything to say yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But now I post 7 times a week, and it's not stuff that most people I've heard that most people say they see on LinkedIn, and it's because I'm actually saying stuff that works because we're talking about what we do. I look at LinkedIn as a diary,
Mhm.
right? It's your journal. And a lot of people say, I have no idea what to post on LinkedIn. Well, just post what you would talk about with your family when you come home from work at dinner.
Mm.
And I know, I mean, and that's just how I look at it. Like, what happened this week that you learned from? What happened this week that you struggled with? What happened this week that was super successful? And write about that next week. And so that's why I always have things to say and I never run out of it because I'm talking about real world experiences that are living in our world every day.
Yeah, that's so interesting because people are I think people tend to think, well, nobody's going to be interested in that. And at the same time, it's the same reason why I started this show is that people want to know that they're not the only one who's going through this struggle. or there's nothing wrong with them for thinking these thoughts or this way. And when
Yeah.
they see somebody else posting about it, they're like, oh, he's just like me, or I went through something similar. Like being able to be that, I don't know, that beacon of light when people maybe need it.
See, that's the biggest thing that I found, and that I've really gotten from social content creation is, I would get on an interview now, and it's weird because they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm interviewing with you." I'm like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "You're like, I see you all the time on LinkedIn," and it's like I almost felt like like a movie star. I'm like, "Oh,
Right.
I'm just a regular guy, man. Like this is just an interview." Like, so it's like it's weird to feel that,
Uh-huh.
frankly. But at the end of the day, it means that it is impactful to people, and it is a takeaway that they're learning from, and it is valuable to people that are out there. And I think that's what keeps me going is I hear, my audience tell me, "Hey, listen, I just got a job as an SDR, not for me, at a different company,
Uh-huh.
and I used some of the tactics you talked about on interview skills last week on LinkedIn, and it got me the job." And
Nice.
I'm just like, "Dude, congratulations, you're gonna crush it." Like that's fun to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. What would you say your values are now? Um, how have they evolved? And yeah, and then I'll ask you the next question after you answer that one.
Well, I will say the do hard things value is absolutely not evolved, if not even become more and more apparent in my life.
Uh-huh.
I just am very passionate about hanging out with people that work hard and not overwhelmed or not like pulling their hair out or not like to the point where like their knuckles are white because they're just
Yeah.
holding on stress, but being passionate about what you do and pursuing that purpose with passion, and working hard every day is what I gravitate to. And that hasn't changed. But I find myself to be less intense. Like when I was in my 20s selling, I was really aggressive. I would say most people probably did not like me. And I know that's hard to say, but I was extremely aggressive and I just wanted to make a ton of money because I didn't come from money and I saw, people in my family destitute and I'm like, that's never going to be me. And I just would rip people's limbs off virtually to close deals. Now I'm a
And
lot
then
more
they couldn't
patient.
sign because they had
Yeah,
no
exactly.
arms.
Yeah, it's impossible. But now I'm significantly the opposite. I'm just like, here's what we do. We feel like we're the best, and we're going to work our butts off for you and treat you like family. And if you don't want to work with us, that's okay. And if you do want to work with us, that's okay. And that's just my attitude.
Uh-huh.
And I found that is actually attracts much more business
Yeah.
than the former, right?
Yes. Yes. Okay. And then the follow-up question to that is, what are the values that you hope you're teaching your daughter?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Um, well, I actually have things that I talk with her about on the way to school every single day, and it's usually ends with "be a leader." So
Mhm.
it's like, hey, be courageous today. Hey, what are you learning today? Hey, how are your friends treating you today? And what I always just end off with is like, be a leader. You know what I mean? And when things are happening that she shouldn't be doing, I ask her, is that something a leader would do? And
Mhm.
usually she's smart enough to know, no, it's not. So that's, I think, the biggest thing because, John Maxwell wrote in his book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And he said, influence is leadership, nothing more, nothing less. Right.
Yeah.
So influencing people is by definition leadership. And I always just tell her that's the biggest thing you can do is influence people to be doing positive things in the right way, is the definition of leadership. And you have to be a leader.
I love that. I was putting together some notes for a new program on Zen leadership that I'm putting
Mm-hmm.
together, a workshop. And one of the thoughts I was having was about Zen leadership is about becoming someone that people want to support
Yeah.
versus somebody that they will just follow because they're the leader. So I'm doing what they said. It's about becoming somebody that they love to support.
Yeah, not John Maxwell, I just said him. Jim Rohn,
Mhm.
amazing. He was actually Tony Robbins' mentor, and so he passed away, I think, in 2009. He's just an amazing orator.
Yes.
And with Jim, what he used to say all the time is not you go do it, it's let's go do it.
Hmm.
Right. So if like it's about leading from the front. We all see those memes out there, right? You bosses whip from the back, leaders lead from the front, right? Well, it's like, hey, listen, that wasn't what I would have done on that sales call, but let me show you how you should do it, and let's do it together, as opposed to just, firing off orders. And so I think that is what leadership is all about, is really just showing people and then inspecting what you expect from that point forward.
Yes. Yes. And I think we're evolving more towards that than ever before. Do you agree?
I think yes. I mean, I think information is just so accessible. And like the guys I just mentioned, Jim Rohn and John Maxwell and Tony Robbins, like you can go on YouTube and just put in their name and you got literally hundreds of hours of content.
Hmm.
Where before I would have to get on a plane, fly to Fort Worth, Texas, and pay $1,000 to watch them speak, and try to write down as many notes in my notepad as humanly possible. So yeah, much different when it comes to accessibility, when it comes to this information that you can hopefully get and turn it into a positive for yourself.
Yeah. And I'm talking about too that the leaders are being more let's go than let me tell you what to do and
Yeah.
send you on your way.
Yeah, I mean, it's that coaching mentality,
Yeah.
right? I grew up with a grandfather who was an amazing coach, like almost every sports team's out there, and so he had always that coaching attitude, and not that bossing attitude. And so I think if you treat in business your team like a good coach would treat players on a sports team, it's really the best way to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, before I let you go,
Okay.
I got to ask you, when you need an extra boost of energy, what is the
Okay.
song you turn to get you revved up
Yeah.
maybe before a important call or
Oh, I
whatever?
got a story for you. So
Okay.
I just got remarried, and my wife and I are diehard Top Gun fans.
Okay.
I was a Top Gun fan since the first one, and then the new one came out recently, as we all know, and blew up the blockbuster records. But we got married, and Danger Zone from Kenny Loggins was the song we walked out to as our wedding reception song,
I love
and
it.
yeah, that gets us fired up, and it gets me excited every time I hear it.
Okay. I love that. I really appreciate that you had a whole story to go with your answer.
Sorry, yeah.
No,
It made me
honestly,
think of it. Music is
that's
great because it makes you think of memories and times in your life, I think, a lot. So that was
yes.
mine. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And then lastly, Gabe, if somebody wants to continue a conversation with you, where's the best place for them to reach you? Is it LinkedIn?
You guessed it. Yeah, it's LinkedIn is where I live when it comes to the world. So if you need anything, shoot me a note. Love to chat.
Okay, I'll put a link to your profile in the show
Thanks.
notes. Gabe,
Perfect.
thanks so much for joining me today on Fine is a Four-Letter Word.
Thank you, Lori.